Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. We begin with developing news and a significant closure on Canada's busiest highway after a police pursuit resulted in a deadly crash. This is a look at the traffic backup on Highway 401 near Whitby tonight. The 401 shut down in both directions between Lake Ridge Road and Brock Street. According to Durham police, officers were responding to a robbery in Clarington just before 8. The suspect fled in a vehicle and got onto the 401 going in the wrong direction. Police say that led to a multi-vehicle collision and there are fatalities. The Special Investigations Unit has been notified. There's no word on how many people were killed or injured. It's also unclear when the highway will reopen. A pro-Palestinian protest at some U.S. and Canadian universities has the University of Toronto taking measures to deter mass encampments from being set up on its campus. The school has fenced off its front lawn and sent students a letter about freedom of expression and protest. It says it has concerns about unauthorized activity on school grounds with graduation ceremonies on the horizon. Dale Manukduk has this story.
Wrapped around the University of Toronto's front lawn is a 6-foot-high fence that spans a few hundred meters. The green space closed off temporarily.
I mean, a lot of people play volleyball there. I know like a bunch of those guys play frisbee there. We all play frisbee there.
Let everyone enjoy the sun. You know, it's summer right now, so maybe opening up the fence will allow for more activities.
The sign posted to the fencing says the reason is due to concerns about unauthorized activity. Over the weekend, the school sent students a letter about protests. One line reads, unauthorized activities such as encampments or the occupation of university buildings are considered trespassing.
Even though they sent us an email that following day stating that, oh, you have the right to express your feelings and everything, and then they just caged the field. So it's contradictory. It's like, does not make sense.
The fencing and the letter come at a time of heightened tensions as protests are taking place on several university campuses across the United States. And over the weekend, demonstrators set up shop in Quebec, joined by some educators who are proud of the action their students are taking.
I don't see here any violation, any damage, any destruction, any violation of anyone's human rights. The students have the right to protest and use civil disobedience.
The University of Toronto's letter goes on to say the university respects our members' rights to assemble and protest within the limits of U of T policies and the law. The university also has a duty of care to our students. Actions that create a health and safety risk that interfere with the ability of students, faculty, librarians, and staff to learn, teach, research, and work on our campuses, or that disrupt or impede other university activities are not permitted.
But are like demonstrations happening there? Like I haven't seen anything like anywhere in like front campus.
To shut down a part of front campus just so that people can't express themselves is kind of messed up, I think.
The decision to prevent a demonstration from happening, sending a clear message to this Palestinian student.
Basically, I don't have the same rights as anyone else. Like, I'm not allowed to express my opinion like anyone else here in the university.
Several other students were not comfortable speaking on camera, but said the university's recent actions made them feel unsafe or uncomfortable to speak out.
I think that a strong case could be made that this is a violation of freedom of expression and a violation of the right to peaceful assembly, both of which are protected by the Charter.
The Canadian Civil Liberties Association notes that college and university campuses, especially publicly funded ones like U of T, are a place where for decades people have protested.
There are, sanitation issues, hygiene issues. I understand that it's disruptive. I understand that people disagree. I understand that these are emotive topics. But as a society that believes in democracy, we have to be able to have conversations. We have to be able to raise our voices and allow other people to raise their voices, and all the more so on university campuses.
Now again, the sign behind me says that the school is preparing for convocation. The school's website says that convocation ceremonies will run until June 21st, but the university wouldn't confirm if the fencing would remain up until then. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Big changes around cell phone use are coming to Ontario classrooms. The province also putting a ban on vaping in school. It's all part of the Ford government's plan to crack down on student distractions. Ali Chiasson has more.
In the new school year, kids from kindergartners to grade 6 who have cell phones have to keep them on silent and out of sight while on school property. Older students from grade 7 to grade 12, they can use their cell phone in between periods, but not in the classroom unless they have special permission granted. Also, come September, teachers will have the power to take a student's cell phone, send them to the office, and also write down on that student's report card just how distracted they have been with their cell phone. That is what this is all about, these new rules, to get students less distracted, more focused on their learning. Here's what students and their parents had to think about that.
I don't think they can take it away that easily, because they've tried in like my brother's school, but it still doesn't work.
And they've already cut off some of the websites that the kids are not allowed on and some of the apps. So I think they shouldn't ban it. I feel like the children, there's certain points where it's necessary.
Cell phones can be like a conflict of interest when it comes to learning, and like it gets in the way.
We have seen cell phone bans before, but it used to be up to each individual school to make up rules that make sense for their student body. And that created inconsistent rules, inconsistent enforcement which became tricky, and it's going to be tricky, so say the teachers' unions.
Social media is a problem, not just for students, but for adults too. But, we're coming down heavy-handed, and I'm worried that we're going to have more policing by teachers and less teaching.
When it comes to vaping, that is going to be an all-out ban. Schools will have a zero-tolerance rule when it comes to vaping, whether it's tobacco or cannabis. We've seen vaping kind of get out of control in schools in recent years, where students would try to vape in class or they would vape in the washroom, and then schools would come up with their own framework of enforcement, some even taking the bathroom doors off of the bathroom. So it's that kind of whack-a-mole situation that the province wants to avoid, and coming up with strict rules that apply across all school boards when it comes to vaping and cell phone use. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
The union that represents the majority of TTC workers has voted overwhelmingly to support a strike mandate. At this point, there's no indication when or if that will lead to a labor disruption, but it does add a great deal of pressure to ongoing contract negotiations between the union and the TTC. Greg Ross has the latest.
Transit was moving at its usual pace in most of the city today, despite a new threat that could cause major disruptions.
We're dealing with issues regarding wages, job security, benefits, safety, and dignity on the job.
Marvin Alfred is the president of the ATU Local 113, the union that represents around 12,000 TTC workers. Despite ongoing contract negotiations with the TTC, 98% of the ATU membership voted over the weekend in favor of a strike mandate.
We've made some progress in certain areas, but unfortunately some of our major items are not being addressed.
So far, the vote to strike hasn't changed the TTC's bargaining position.
The vote that was taken over the weekend has no timelines associated with it. There are no dates. There's nothing that's imminent that we're aware of. Let's be clear, we're still at the table. Both sides are still in a conversation. Over this past weekend, a provincial conciliator was appointed. So these talks are being conducted with an arbitrator in the middle, with mediation happening.
If the ATU's 12,000 members do take strike action, it could have devastating impacts on transit in the city.
If there is labor action, it could include different things, up to it including a full system shutdown. That has been the case in the past.
The union represents operators, fare collectors, maintenance and station staff, as well as other frontline employees. That's concerning for those who rely on the service.
I rely on it to get to school, to visit my friends, just to live my life.
It's going to be crazy. It's even bad with driving.
I'd be at a total standstill for my life. There wouldn't be much to do.
This is the first time in well over a decade that TTC workers have been in a position to strike. Provincial legislation that was passed in 2011 didn't permit them to take labor action. They won the right back in court last year after a judge ruled that the legislation violated the Charter of Rights. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Patio season is just around the corner, and the city is gearing up once again for Cafe TO. It says hundreds of licenses have already been approved for this year's program, which allows restaurants and bars to expand outdoor spaces onto sidewalks and curb lanes. As Anam Khan reports, the city says it's making some changes this year to help businesses open more easily and sooner than ever before.
The weather is getting warmer and restaurants are gearing up to open their patios. The city's saying it's on track to have 90% of Café TO patios ready for Victoria Day weekend.
I'm very excited about this season.
With hundreds of permits already approved, Councillor Paula Fletcher says many new businesses will be joining the program, adding that the process will be easier than in years past.
The biggest problem was there was too many city divisions that were doing Café TO, and they weren't all talking and coordinated. So we have one-stop shopping. It's a concierge model. One stop, everybody reports to one person.
Café TO kicked off in 2020 to help generate more businesses for restaurants amidst the pandemic. A study funded by the city estimated Café TO generated more than $200 million in economic benefits in 2022, with over 1,300 businesses taking part. But the program was also subject to criticism, complaints about patio spaces taking away parking spaces, and lack of accessibility for wheelchair users. Fletcher says all of that will be a thing of the past.
Last year, we said we're going to cut red tape, we're going to make it smooth for small business, and I've looked at all of my patios. They're all going in as they should.
Still, some restaurant owners are skeptical.
I think the city's completely out of touch.
The owner of DeSoto's Eatery on St. Clair West says he was denied a permit for the Café TO program in previous years, and now his permanent patio is at risk of shutting down because of a license dispute.
I've been at this location 20 years and literally have had to apply for the patio at least 3 to 4 times. And every time it just gets more complicated and complicated.
Did they tell you that if you remove these posts and these lights, you can get your license?
Yes, verbally.
And you don't want to do that?
Show me the violation.
The city says it's working with DeSoto's Eatery to help it comply with the city's bylaws. Meanwhile, Fletcher will be joining Mayor Olivia Chow tomorrow morning to announce an update to this year's Café TO program. Adam Khan, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. Changes could be coming to Ontario's Meds Check program after a CBC investigation revealed accusations that Shoppers Drug Mart was taking advantage of the program. A Meds Check is when a pharmacist and patient meet to go over medications to ensure they're being taken correctly. Angelina King has the latest on the fallout.
Then this one is on an as-needs basis.
Marg Davies says she was shocked to learn through her doctor that Shoppers Drug Mart billed the government for a meds check on her.
I was angry because I knew that I hadn't had one. I happened to have gone into my doctor about a month after this had happened. I found out about it. How many other people have had meds checks charged to them and they're not aware of it?
She says the pharmacist told her they'd reverse the charge. Allegations of improper meds checks at Shoppers and corporate pressure to hit billing targets for them has prompted some to take a closer look at the program. The issue was revealed in a recent CBC Toronto investigation. At the time, the company's president denied the pressure and any use of corporate targets, but pharmacists and documents have said otherwise. The body that regulates pharmacists in Ontario says it's now tracking meds checks complaints specifically related to pressure to meet targets and looking to see if previous complaints also fall into that category. It's working on a report based on responses from a survey and town halls where pharmacists shared their experiences with corporate pressure.
It's heartbreaking to watch. There isn't any question that this profession is in crisis.
While the college licenses pharmacists, it doesn't have authority over the companies they work for, but it's retained legal counsel to explore its options.
We are looking at things like accreditation standards that require business owners to demonstrate or for us to be reassured that the business will be run with integrity.
The Ontario Pharmacists Association says it's meeting with the government in the coming weeks to discuss potential changes to the program. The CEO says he'd like to discuss alleviating the administrative burden, the possibility of expanding it to a chronic disease management program, and changing the eligibility to possibly 5 medications instead of 3.
What I'd like to see is the proper use of how we go about measuring success and health outcomes being a big part of that rather than necessarily driven by a bottom line. There is benefit to the system and patients when it's done appropriately.
Sony Polo says that's evident at his pharmacy.
So this medication is going to make you a little bit drowsy.
where MedsCheck is done nearly every day because they cater to patients with chronic conditions.
This one is a very valuable program, and we could avoid a lot of other health issues. It's very, very important to use this kind of programs appropriately, and the patient benefit should be the primary focus.
Since CBC Toronto's reporting, Ontario's health minister said she's asked the ministry to review the program, but it's unclear what that entails. Last week, she said all pharmacy programs are constantly monitored.
We assess those programs to ensure that the intention is actually making an impact for patients and for the system as a whole. We'll tweak when it's appropriate, but to ensure that the programs actually are providing the necessary oversight for patient safety.
Documents obtained by CBC show since our reporting, Shoppers Drug Marts in Ontario have an updated procedure when it comes to meds checks, including a more robust documentation of patient consent. In a statement, the company told us that meds checks are vital and can help save lives. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto police have arrested 12 people and laid more than 100 charges in a sprawling synthetic identity fraud investigation. And normally, these cases involve real people's information being mixed with fake information to open bank accounts and lines of credit. But that wasn't the case this time. Chris Glover explains.
A year and a half ago, a financial institution found several fake accounts opened by the same former employee. In October 2022, the bank alerted Toronto police, officers realizing it was part of a sophisticated fraud ring, duping banks and credit agencies out of millions of dollars.
We don't want to identify the specific institution. The investigation concluded with identifying that most of the financial institutions were victimized by this scheme.
The Financial Crimes Unit has announced 12 people were arrested, most of them from Peel Region, now facing more than 100 fraud charges. Police say starting way back in 2016, the accused used fake information to create fraudulent identities to open real bank accounts, draining them of money quickly and illegally.
Synthetic identities can be used to create essentially piggy banks for them. They're applying for credit cards, they're applying for lines of credit, they're opening bank accounts in which they can funnel money in and out of. So they're essentially applying for unlimited amounts of credit in fictional synthetic names.
Oftentimes, synthetic ID fraudsters steal a real victim's information, but in this scheme, police say the alleged fraudsters made it all up.
These are completely made up and random right from the beginning. They're completely synthetic. But yes, there are instances of that in other investigations where it's kind of a hybrid mix of real people versus synthetic. In this case, though, 100% synthetic.
The really interesting thing about Project Deja Vu was that all the fake profiles in this matter were fake. They weren't using anybody's real identity.
Ryan Duquette is a former police officer who specialized in fraud.
With generative AI, it's getting easier and easier for fraudsters to create these identities. Deep fakes are out there now. We've seen video and audio deep fakes, and it's no different with creating these identities.
In total, police say they identified 680 fake accounts had been opened, leading to $4 million in confirmed losses. Banks are the main victims, but police warn some people may have bought products and services from the fraudsters, and they're asking anybody who interacted with these men to contact them.
These types of frauds are not just used for these attackers or these fraudsters gaining, the money out of the banks. They are interlinked with a whole bunch of other activity, anti-money laundering, and that money is then going for other criminal activities.
Some of them have been charged with money laundering. Police say the 12 accused in this fraud ring are not yet linked to a wider criminal operation, but officers are still investigating.
The fraudsters are really smart. They're advancing with technology. The identification is very convincing. It often does get caught at the financial institutions, but it doesn't always get caught.
Officers anticipate there could be more charges.
We get 50 fraud reports a day in our office. Fraud is rampant and at epidemic levels right now.
And warn thwarting this fraud ring will only be a dent in the overall problem. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, Colette is back with the last check on your forecast, which includes a little bit of rain.
Yeah, we are looking at some wet weather on the way. I mean, the skies have been threatening all day, so we continue to have the kind of gloomy conditions, the easterly winds, and some of these rain showers that will be affecting us right through towards tomorrow morning and lingering into early Tuesday at least. We do have some cooler areas today, not southwestern Ontario, but elsewhere in there. The temperatures where they have been a bit cooler, they're going to rebound closer to seasonal, and then we'll find things actually warming up and more sunshine coming into Wednesday and Thursday. So some of the daytime highs, this is what I mean by the areas that have been cool, because it has not been Sarnia, Windsor, Chatham-Kent, or London today. Just some glorious conditions there. So the wet weather keeps working its way through, lingering into tomorrow morning. There will likely be some wet roadways for the morning commute, especially if you're just going to be on the roads headed into eastern Ontario, but even elsewhere. And then we'll see things around the GTA drying out. Certainly a great day shaping up once you get into the afternoon for southwestern Ontario again. And it'll take a little more time, too, around Georgian Bay, where you've had more of the active weather to get this out of here. So still a wet day there through tomorrow. But then we really do see some improvement going into Wednesday. Still a slight chance of getting some showers, but it gets better and better through Wednesday with more sunshine and into Thursday as well. So the reason, the cooler temperatures, the easterly flow, or at least an easterly component, and a west to southwesterly flow in southwestern Ontario along that boundary with the warm front. So it's not quite getting in and enveloping the rest of the lower Great Lakes, but at least we do get that temperature back to seasonal, and then we'll benefit from a bit of that warm up and getting into the upper teens as we get a little bit deeper into the week. Now, overnight temperatures holding in the mid-teens. Sarnia for Windsor, 8 to 9 degrees, that low through the GTA. Very little change from where the temperatures were even earlier in the day. But there's the high for Tuesday as we dry out, the day wears on, 14 degrees. A mix of sun and clouds, still that chance of showers Wednesday, but 17. And then Thursday, perhaps one of the better days of the week, with a high popping up to 19 degrees. And still, again, we'll have some sun there.
Yeah, I like those temperatures you have there. Thanks so much, Colette. And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you back here tomorrow at 6. Have a great night, everyone.